Now we're going to talk about both Black Christmas remakes. 2006, 2019. There are only 13 years between these remakes, and they're both awful. Really, really awful.
Mrs. Mack, why don't you open the present we got you?
Because we have to open Billy's present first. It's a Delta Alpha Kappa tradition.
I'm really not okay with any of this. I mean, buying a Christmas present for a serial killer?
Heather, we're just having a little bit of fun.
Where's Agnes? Shouldn't you get going? Don't you have lots of toys to deliver to good little boys and girls? You really shouldn't provoke somebody like that.
So, Black Christmas 2006 is where we're going to start. And this movie was released during the just tidal wave of horror remakes from the 2000s because the 2000s basically kicked off with three horror remakes, all doing very, very well at the box office. The Ring, which got a bunch of J horror remakes started, and most of them were terrible. And then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was a massive hit actually, and had a really good trailer. So I was really why, because it's not the best of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. It's actually my least favorite of all of them, but it was a huge box office success. And then the Dawn of the Dead remake. And between those three movies, they just started remaking everything. I mean, over the next few years, they were grabbing up every property they could get their hands on. Now, with these remakes, the formula generally was more gore, cell phones, and younger leads, and then a less intelligent script. And also, weirdly, they would a lot of times remove, they'd up the gore, but they'd remove things that were potentially controversial. It was this weird kind of balancing act. Like in the Black Christmas '06 remake, they completely removed the abortion subplot. It's it condenses time. It all takes place in one night. It's very straightforward as a slasher. You know, the Black Christmas of '74 was relatively smart, or at the very least, it focused more on suspense. This movie is purely about the kills. It's very dumbed down. It's very just body count, body count, body count. And that would be fine if it wasn't so stupid and kind of annoying. So, this movie was directed by Glenn Morgan, which is actually weird because Glenn Morgan directed the Wilfred remake just before this with Kristen Glover, and I would actually argue that the Wilfred remake is one of the very few remakes that's better than the original. The 1970s Wilfred, it's good, but it's so dated and it has flaws. I think that the 2000s remake, don't remember what year it was, did more with the story, did more with the character. It was a better movie in my opinion. So, but it did very poorly at the box office. So Black Christmas was kind of, or Black Xmas, I should say, was kind of his attempt to do something more commercial. Because Wilfred is a weird movie about a weird guy who is obsessed with rats. So Black Christmas is, or Black Xmas, I can get that title right, is pretty girls in a sorority house getting stalked by a killer. That's pretty straightforward. You can sell that to anybody. So yeah, in Black Xmas, the reason I keep correcting myself on that is because that was changed for this movie. The poster had to say Black Xmas because Christian groups protested you shouldn't have Christ in the title of a horror movie, Black Christmas. So it became Black Xmas. So this was released during the George W. Bush presidency, and the religious right had a lot of power at that time. Kind of like cancel culture now. I mean, it wasn't as strong actually, but it was still pretty powerful. So they changed that and it became Black Xmas. So I saw this movie when it came out in theaters, and then I saw the unrated cut on DVD when it got released, and I didn't see it again until just now to do this review. It still sucks. It's it. At first, I was thinking this is a little better than I remember because the first third of the movie is okay. It's not good, but like I said, pretty girls, graphic kills. Yeah, it's all right. It's killing time, but then actually kind of like the original, it started to. But unlike the original, which I just thought got kind of slow in the middle, this movie started to irritate me in the middle for a few reasons. So fans of the original are going to be mad right off the bat because this movie completely betrays all the ambiguity surrounding Billy. This movie has a series of flashbacks. The first 30 minutes of this movie, probably 15 of those are flashbacks to Billy's childhood. It tells you everything beat by beat that what happened with the freak living in the attic. So it tells you about how his mom was a deranged alcoholic that hated him because he was born with lupus. I think it's lupus. the liver disease that turns her skin yellow. So his mom hated him, and then his mom eventually killed his dad in front of him, and then moved her lover into the house and locked him in the attic. And like her, the mom's boyfriend was impotent because he was an alcoholic, so the mom wanted to have another kid, so she went and banged her 12-year-old son. And so this was the 2000s. Movies were pretty edgy back then. So she went and banged her child son and got pregnant by him and had a little girl named Agnes. So they're keeping the name of they're keeping the names the same. And but in this movie, this is actually Billy's house. The sorority house is Billy's house. I swear that's not in the original movie. If it was, I missed it. And I read the book too, so I don't think I did. So this is actually Billy's house, and that explains why he chose to hide in this house specifically. But this movie also introduces the idea that Agnes is alive, that he failed to kill her. He tried to kill her, but he didn't. He tried suffocating her, same as in the original. So Billy then finally broke out of his attic. He tried to kill his sister daughter, and then murdered his mom and her boyfriend. And all this is extremely gory. I mean, like when the boyfriend gets stabbed, he gets stabbed through the head, and his eyeball comes out the back of his skull. And I know that's impossible, but it's still kind of a cool gag. And this movie is obsessed with eyeballs. You'd think this was a Lucio Fulci film, for God's sake. This has so much eye gouging, eye eating. He eats a couple eyeballs. Like, even the missing girl Claire. That's the only name I believe. Well, aside from the killers, Billy and Agnes, it's the only name they carried over from the original movie is Claire. But even her screensaver is an eyeball with wings attached to it. It's weird. There's no reason that would be her screensaver, but it is. And so this movie is they're doing Secret Santa. They tell the story of Billy. Andrea Martin, who played Phil, the kind of dowdy friend in the first movie, not the main character, but the best friend of the main character, it returns to play the house mother in this movie. And she's not an alcoholic anymore, so she's just a pretty straightforward standard house mother. I could not think of that term to save my life when I was doing the original review. But yeah, house mother, the lady in charge of the sorority. So they're doing this Secret Santa thing, and they explain the story of Billy. And this movie replaces the abortion subplot with a sex tape subplot. That the boyfriend, who's played by Oliver Hudson, who's been in some stuff. He's actually Kurt Russell's stepson, Kate Hudson's brother. But he starred on that David Spade sitcom Rules of Engagement, and I know he's been in some other stuff I can't think of off the top of my head. But he's the boyfriend, and he has this thing where he secretly records the girls he has sex with, and he had sex with one of the other girls in the sorority house, and the tape got leaked to the internet, and he's trying to keep his current girlfriend, the female lead of this movie, played by Kate Cassidy, from finding out, and she of course finds out. But Katie Cassidy, who stars in this, was on that CW show Arrow, and she was also on Supernatural. This movie has a bunch of people that were on Supernatural. They're both filmed in Canada, so I guess because Supernatural ran for 30 years, it just used all the actors in Canada. So it also has Crystal Lowe, who plays the drunk. Crystal Lowe replaces Margot Kidder as the kind of drunk, mouthy sorority girl, and she was on an episode of Supernatural. A few other people were. So yeah, it has. And I mentioned two killers, by the way. So this has Billy and Agnes, and it kind of gives away right away. So it's this weird thing where they kind of pretend it's a twist, but it's not, because you see kills happening before Billy escapes from the mental institution. So there's two of them. So it's this weird thing where at the end of the movie it's kind of treated like a reveal, even though if you're paying attention, there have to be two killers working to whatever. It was a dumb twist. It was a really dumb twist. So yeah. So it stars Katie Cassidy, and it stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's had a pretty long and successful career now. She's worked very consistently. She did a lot of horror stuff in the 2000s. She was in Quentin Tarantino's half of Grindhouse, Death Proof. She was the really pretty brunette in the cheerleader outfit. She was in this. She was in Final Destination 3 with Crystal Lowe. Glenn Morgan, the guy who directed in this movie, was a co-creator of the Final Destination franchise, and he was co-writer on Final Destination 3. I believe he also produced it. So he brought two of the actresses over, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Crystal Lowe. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead supposedly did this movie because she was a fan of the original movie, but declined to star in it because she thought she'd get typecast, which that doesn't make sense to me. I think she probably just realized the movie was crap and said, "Fine, I'll take a role, but I don't want to be on set for the whole thing." And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I like her a lot. She's very attractive. She's talented. She was great on that season of Fargo. She was one of the only good things about that new Birds of Prey Harley Quinn movie that sucked. But she's not very good in this movie. She's supposed to be Southern, and she keeps forgetting her accent. She'll have a real thick accent in some scenes, and then she just talks normal in others. So that's pretty inconsistent. Crystal Lowe is actually a lot of fun in this movie. She's very entertaining, but unfortunately, she's not in it as much. She has a smaller part than Margot Kidder had in the original. And then you got Lacey Chabert in here and Michelle Trachtenberg. And the weird thing about them is Lacey Chabert was just coming off of a few successes. She was on this TV show called Party of Five, and then she was in the Lost in Space movie, and then she was in Mean Girls. And Michelle Trachtenberg had just done Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So those were kind of the movie's biggest names, but they're supporting characters. And the trailer, notoriously, footage was shot specifically for the trailer to make them look like they were in the movie more. It's just additional scenes with Lacey Chabert and Michelle Trachtenberg. They even give one of Katie Cassidy's lines in the movie to Michelle Trachtenberg in the trailer. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Michelle Trachtenberg says that in the trailer, but that was Katie Cassidy. Katie Cassidy's the lead. They were just trying to. There's even a version of the poster that's Michelle Trachtenberg's face. It's just all her. It doesn't even. It really. They were trying to trick people into thinking these two actresses were in the movie more than they were, which is weird because why not just give them bigger parts? I actually would have preferred to see Lacey Chabert more because she's gorgeous. But yeah. So there's not much plot here. It's kind of like it's just a slasher movie. Yeah, but it's dumber than a normal slasher movie. So there's a part in really low tier slasher flicks where you're like, why didn't you just run out of the house? Just bolt, just beeline. So they try to sort of justify that in this movie by saying there's a snowstorm outside, but there isn't. There's not. Every time it goes outside, it's like a light dusting of snow. At one point, it shows the wind blow over the Joseph in their little manger, their nativity scene out front, and it's just like, okay, so the wind's lightly blowing. It's blowing just about hard enough to mess up my hair if I went outside, and these bitches aren't gonna run outside for help. Oh, and it's also great because they call the cops. They straight up call the cops and say there have been murders. Like they find several bodies. There's no oh, we think our friend's missing like in the first movie. No, this is straight up. We have dead bodies that have been murdered in our sorority house. We need the cops, and the cops apparently tell them we'll be there in about 2 hours. Your police force sucks. You should stop paying your taxes right now. Defund those police. We'll be there in 2 hours for your multiple homicides. Where the hell is the sorority house? Is it like in the middle of nowhere or something? It was just so dumb. And like I said, they don't remotely sell it. You don't even hear the wind outside throughout the movie. They don't sell this storm at all, at all. So yeah, it's a body count movie, and that's all it is. It's just a dumber body count movie, and it also does this thing. So in the original movie, there's this pretty minor character, the missing girl that dies at the very beginning of the original film, Claire. Her dad is kind of wandering around the campus looking for his daughter. It's a very small part. You could forget he's even in the movie, basically. He's only in maybe 5 scenes, barely talks. But they replace him with a different character for this movie. This is Claire's long-lost sister. And she's in this movie so much. And I literally, about halfway through watching this, was like, why the hell is the sister in this movie so much? Like, the actress isn't especially good. She's way too old for a role. She says, like, oh, I'm 12 years older. You look like you're 45. How old is your sister? She's in college, but it's just an unnecessary character. I'm like, why am I spending so much time with this character? I looked it up, and the actress is married to Glenn Morgan, the director, so that's why she's in the movie so much, because she was married to the director, which is dumb. I guess like his wife wanted a part, but he couldn't make her one of the sorority girls because she's way too old for that. But she wasn't quite old enough to sell as the house mother, so they just kind of like invented this role for her and gave her a ton of screen time. And she's just not good in the movie. I would rather spend time with any of the other characters. Like Crystal Lowe is a lot of fun. Crystal Lowe is interesting because she was kind of in the 2000s like stunt tits for movies, because she would do nudity, and she did nudity in almost every movie she was in. It was almost always a supporting role, and out of her 4 or 5 scenes she would have in the movie, she'd get naked. But I like her in this movie. She's fun. Like she's not as bitchy as Margot Kidder was, so she's a lot more likable. But she's more just sarcastic, and it's she's a fun character. I would have liked to see her in it more. And like I said, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Lacey Chabert, and then there are, like this movie has a lot of kills in it, and the kills are generally okay. Like they're kind of dumb, but they're so over the top gory that it sort of makes up for it. And Glenn Morgan was actually against that. He said that the Weinsteins forced him to do all the excessive gore because they had seen the success of movies like Hostel. This was Dimension Films, Harvey Weinstein and Bob Weinstein. I know everyone hates Harvey Weinstein now, obviously for very good reason, but he and the Weinsteins were known for this. Like they would step all over directors. They actually had a really bad reputation for that. So Glenn Morgan complained that he didn't want to do all that gore, but the gore is kind of the only memorable thing in this movie. This is just not a very good movie. Like the killers having that liver disease, it makes their skin yellow, but that's not an intimidating or creepy thing. It just makes them look silly. I don't know what a person who has that disease really looks like because I've never met any. I don't even think I've ever really seen a picture of someone who really had it. But these two, like Billy and Agnes, they look like the Simpsons characters. It looks like Bart and Lisa jumped out of the TV and just went homicidal on these people. It doesn't work at all. Oh, and the bit where Billy's making Christmas cookies out of people's skin. Okay, how sharp are these cookie molds? That was dumb. So, like I said, most of the kills are stupid, but they're generally fairly entertaining. Lacey Chabert's was very forgettable, which was disappointing. They could have at least given her a good send off. But it's great. So Crystal Lowe, of course, goes off to get naked because I think it was in her contract. She had to get naked in every movie she did. It's like that, going back to The Simpsons, like Nelson's mom. I don't have to take my top off in the next movie I do, but I'm gonna anyway. So she goes into the bathroom, and Billy in this movie is like the people under the stairs. He lives in the wall. Billy and Agnes both. They both like live in the walls, and they're crawling like through the between, which this would be a unique house because most houses aren't built like this. But they're crawling in between the walls and all those crawl spaces. And when Crystal Lowe goes to take a shower, Billy has, Agnes, one of them, has made little peepholes, but not in the wall like a normal movie. They've made peepholes in the floor, so they're like looking straight up, which was really funny because in a bathroom you're gonna see some interesting angles when you do that. And it gets even creepier when you consider that they would have been looking at their parents. That was funny. Just a little eyeball looking up while she's taking her clothes off. It's like, okay, you're getting quite the bird's eye, the reverse of a bird's eye view. You're getting one hell of a view, though. So, Crystal Lowe, her death is off screen in the R-rated cut. In the unrated cut, you see it, but it's still not all that memorable. The best kills are basically after a few murders, the house mother, the Andrea Martin's character, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are just nope out. They're like, nope, nope, don't care anymore. We need to leave. We have to stay and try and find our friends. It's like, yeah, they're obviously dead. But anyway, like, we're supposed to be sisters, right? And their response is later. So the house mother and Mary Elizabeth Winstead just go out the car. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead explodes or something. It doesn't show her die, just the windshield is suddenly sprayed with blood. And the house mother is out in front. And she gets A Christmas Story. Remember The Christmas Story, directed by the guy who directed Black Christmas, which is why I don't think this was an accident or coincidence. I think they were literally trying to do A Christmas Story, where the little kid Ralphie goes out and he hits the icicle with the BB gun and it falls and hits his glasses, and it doesn't hurt him, but like maybe it left a scratch under his eye or something. He's worried he put his eye out. In this movie, the friggin' icicle falls and goes clean through his skull. Again, stupid but funny. And then Michelle Trachtenberg, who also refuses to leave, is upstairs, and she basically is just waiting to die. Like, there's no reason that she's up there by herself in the dark, knowing there's a killer on the loose. She's just like, I'm here, killer, ready to get me. I've been in this movie as much as I intend to. Apparently, Michelle Trachtenberg insisted that her character die. Her character lived in the script. So she gets the plastic bag. Billy and Agnes are both obsessed with plastic bags in this movie. I guess that they were like, well, there was one in the original movie, so we got to use it. So he gets the plastic bag over her face, but she manages to fight it off, which is funny later. But she manages to fight it off, and then the killer grabs an ice skate and throws it with such force that it chops off the top of her head, and you see her brain. So then you have it's down to the female lead, Katie Cassidy, her boyfriend, Oliver Hudson, and the sister character, Claire's sister, the older woman. And it's funny, Oliver Hudson in this movie. Okay, if you watch the original Black Christmas, the boyfriend character, Peter, he can depending on your perspective, he might seem like a bit of a dick. It kind of comes down to how you feel about abortion rights and all that, but he's not especially likable. But Oliver Hudson in this movie is just a straight up asshole. Like, he at one point he's just like shouting at all the girls in the story, like, "You're all a bunch of bitches, you stupid whores." And he has no right to be mad. Like, he had no right to be filming these girls without their permission. So he should be apologizing. He should be like, "Oh yeah, no, I was totally wrong. I never like no." Instead, he gets all defensive, like, "No, you're all just bitches. This didn't hurt anything." And he leaves, and he comes back and he gets his ass kicked. Just like he doesn't get killed, but he does get the hell beat out of him. And then he goes up in the attic because he's gonna like be the hero and save the day, but not. So he gets up in the attic and gets a plastic bag over his head. And unlike Michelle Trachtenberg, and this is before Michelle Trachtenberg started gaining weight, so she's still thin in this movie. Unlike 100-pound, 5 foot nothing Michelle Trachtenberg, who had the presence of mind to say, "I'm just gonna pull the plastic bag off my head and run," he's like crawling around on the floor with a bag over his head, like, "Oh no no!" Then the killer, of course, kills him. And it's Agnes. And then Agnes is used the decapitated head of this minor character to act as the angel on top of the Christmas tree in her little attic home away from home. Because I guess she's been living up there forever. And Billy escaped, and he gets there, and they say, and Katie Cassidy's trying to talk her down because the sister falls halfway through the ceiling, because in the attic, so she gets her legs stuck in the ceiling. And Katie Cassidy's all trying to pull her up, like, "Please, please." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Yes, please. Save me from falling to safety 5 feet below me. This isn't a mansion. She's just gonna fall 5 feet." And she'd be away from the killer. But then Katie Cassidy's like trying to talk down to Agnes. She's like, "You don't have to do this. You're not like your brother. Yo, he's not here." Like, and then she says, "No, I'm not like my brother. I'm like my daddy." Because remember, her brother's also her dad. So then Billy shows up, and they do this weird tag team thing because Billy gets stuck between the walls, and Agnes, and that part was actually kind of cool. Like I said, this is like people under the stairs. These walls are insane how much space there is in them. So they think they killed him, and Katie Cassidy and the sister go to the hospital, and it does that fake out, but it's not over yet. It reminded me a lot of the end of Scream 4, actually. And then Agnes is still alive, and she goes, "Billy." They look so much alike. No, I think it's Billy. Yeah, it's Billy. So Billy's still alive, and he goes chasing them all over the hospital. He kills the sister finally, but then Katie Cassidy pushes him over this railing, and he gets impaled on the world's strongest Christmas tree because he's stuck on the thing like that. So this is a really dumb movie. It's annoying. It wastes the talent that it has. It's got some decent gore effects, but they're spaced out too much. And generally, the visual style of this movie is annoying. It's very comic bookish, kind of. It's hard to explain. The colors are weird. They're kind of garish, and it's hard to explain how this movie looks without just seeing it. But the look of the movie is annoying. It's very over the top. It's kind of like Tales from the Crypt, but not good. It's very campy, and it's none of the characters are interesting. Again, Michelle Trachtenberg is giving a pretty solid performance, and the reason I point that out is because even though her acting is fine in the movie, she has two of the worst. She really has the two worst lines in the movie. At one point, yeah, after they get the prank phone call, the requisite prank phone call, like in the original movie, she says, "That wasn't. That was the devil on the phone," and it sounds so awkward and so forced. And then later on, when Crystal Lowe, the alcoholic, is puking into the toilet, she's doing the whole hold her hair thing for her. And Crystal Lowe's like, "You're a better sister to me than my real sister." Michelle Trachtenberg's reaction is, "Dick Cheney's a better sister to you than your real sister." It's like that doesn't mean anything. Like, yeah, Dick Cheney was the vice president at the time, and he was known for being kind of a dick. Literally, like, he was known for being an asshole, but that doesn't mean anything. It's just a reference. But so this is a dumb movie. The script is bad, and it's ironic that Glenn Morgan was worried that if this movie failed, it would kill his career because Wilfred had also done badly, because it absolutely did. This movie failed, and He never directed another movie. He's only directed one other thing. It was an episode of The X-Files. So, yeah. This is bad, but this isn't uniquely bad. This is just a bad throwaway nothing movie. It's not the only thing that's memorable is the gore, and it's honestly hard to screw up a movie where you have pretty fairly talented actresses getting killed in a house by a psycho. Like that's such a basic, easy slasher concept, and they failed miserably. But they didn't fail nearly as bad as Sophia Takal in Black Christmas 2019.
It's my privilege to teach you this semester. Enjoy your winter breaks and Merry Christmas.
What's up, ladies? Excited for tonight?
It is our last day of our last fall semester of college ever.
So, Black Christmas 2019 is a Blumhouse movie. And Blumhouse films do range in quality. They do. They some of them are pretty good, some of them are pretty bad, and there's a lot of them are just middle of the road, whatever movies. But Black Christmas is monumentally awful. In fact, I'm going to go on record here and say that Black Christmas 2019 is probably the second worst horror remake of all time. I used to say that the two worst horror remakes ever are Pulse and The Fog. With Pulse, what they did was they took an intelligent, thoughtful Korean, I believe it was Korean, it was Asian, horror film about how technology causes us to become lonely and disconnected and disaffected from society, ultimately leading to a lack of willpower and a lack of life. And turned it into a dipshit CW pilot starring Kristen Bell and the guy from the Vampire Diaries. It's such a bad movie. It's an awful movie. It's a hard to watch bad movie. Like when I saw it, I was just sitting there mind blown. And The Fog took an intelligent, well-crafted ghost story by John Carpenter and also made it look like a CW pilot. It starred the guy from Smallville and the blonde that played Liam Neeson's daughter in the Taken movies. So I used to always go, those were my two go-tos. Like those are the two worst horror remakes I've ever seen. Anything beyond that is not nearly as bad, frankly. But then I saw Black Christmas.
She was pounding vodka sodas earlier, but she looked really good.
We shouldn't have let her go back by herself. She's fine. Come on, live a little.
I knew this movie was going to be bad. I did. It's just that I guess I didn't believe that it could be quite as bad as it is. So, people have a pretty knee-jerk reaction now when it comes to politics being inserted into movies and TV shows, and they can kind of exaggerate. But Black Christmas 2019 is so preachy and so on the nose and so overtly anti-male. It's mind-boggling. It's insane that this movie got pushed through a studio when they're effectively alienating 50% of the population, just outright. Just, no, we don't want any men. No, none. And I guess that's why they went for the PG-13 rating. This movie was shot for an R rating, but then cut significantly to get the PG-13. And didn't help. Movie tanked. It's actually one of the worst wide-opening releases of all time. It made less than Black Christmas 2016, and you got to figure that's with 15 years of inflation, and it still made less. That's pretty bad. But the flick, like Sophia Takal apparently wanted to do or was negotiating with Blumhouse, and she wanted to do a remake of I Spit on Your Grave, which was a movie she considered misogynistic. Well, first off, I Spit on Your Grave had been remade and then had a couple sequels to the remake. But they said, we're not doing that. And they ended up giving her Black Christmas, another movie she considered misogynistic. This woman even considered Deadpool to be misogynistic. The reason there's a parody of Mean Girls in Black Christmas 2019 is that she thought that movie was misogynistic. God in heaven, this woman has got to be unbearable. This has got to be one of those people that you just can't sit in a room with. You're just sitting there like, oh my God, stop talking. Like she'd just be sitting there like, you know what Donald Trump did today? Have you heard what? We have to take down the patriarchy, like right now. Like, oh my God, are you always on? Do you think about anything else? Going by this movie, I'd say no. I don't think she does. This flick. So the opening is okay-ish. It starts out with this fake quote by the main villain of the movie who says essentially it says men are so powerful it's almost supernatural. Whatever. then they have this party where they're doing Secret Santa, and one girl has given the other girl a vibrator for her Secret Santa. And she's like, now you'll never need a man again. All right, I'm just gonna go in the other room and shoot myself, so I don't have to watch the rest of this movie. It's mind-boggling. But then it gets to funny bad territory pretty fast because the first girl, Claire, I think they still call her Claire. I think her name's still Claire. Pretty sure. That's like the one consistent thing in all these movies because Black Christmas 2019 has nothing to do with the others. They keep the rocking chair with the dead body upstairs thing, and I think they kept Claire, and then it's still a sorority house around Christmas, but that's not as much connection as it has. So anyway, Claire leaves, and she leaves the party, and she goes for this long walk in a well-lit suburban neighborhood, and she starts getting these weird texts, and she sees this guy walking behind her in a well-lit suburban neighborhood at 9:45. It says on the phone it's 9:45, and she starts getting freaked out. It's like, you couldn't be in a more safe area. Like, so she gets freaked out. Then the guy walks away, so it's not the guy, but then this hooded figure starts chasing her around. And it's sort of hilarious because the hooded, again, this is so public. This is so ridiculously public. How does this happen? So she runs to the first door she goes to, which just happens to be the killer's house. So the killer opens the door and attacks her, and then she gets stabbed to death. And in the process of getting stabbed to death, she makes a snow angel like she's flailing around. So that was all so stupid. It was funny, and I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be bad, but this might be entertainingly bad. And it is. It's annoying in places, but it's generally so stupid that you just can't help but laugh at it. So after that, we get introduced to our lead actress, Imogen Poots, who A, is too good for this movie, and B, is the living embodiment of why there's stage names. Your last name is Poots. Poots, P-O-O-T-S. There's a reason Tom Cruise goes by Tom Cruise and not his birth name. There's a reason Jean-Claude Van Damme goes by Jean-Claude Van Damme and not his birth name. I'm just going to take a wild guess and say Megan Fox was not born Megan Fox. But she's sticking with it, Imogen Poots. So I've seen this actress in a couple things. She was actually in 28 Weeks Later as a kid, the sequel to 28 Days Later. And then she was in that Need for Speed movie with Jesse from Breaking Bad. I know she's been in some other stuff. Those are the two main things I've seen her in. But, so she stars, and we're introduced to her while she's having a friend of hers ask her for like a tampon. Like, she says, I lost my tampon, can I borrow yours? And then we get the super fun scene of watching her insert a tampon, like in front of her friend. I don't feel like that's normal. Maybe women would do that, but I feel like that's the kind of thing you do in private. But I don't know. And the friend's shirt says, I'm tired of you monologuing at me. Like monologuing, I'm tired of you monologuing at me. Down with the patriarchy. God. Then get introduced to the other sisters. None of these characters are especially interesting. Again, Imogen Poots actually is, and that's sort of sad because you feel like both she and the character she's playing deserved a better movie. Her backstory is that she was pretty well known, fairly popular normal girl until she got date raped at a frat house, and no one would believe her when it happened, so she had to kind of eat it basically. Like there was no evidence, so the guy got away with it, and he graduated, and now she's kind of dealing with that trauma. And that's a solid storyline, except that this movie doesn't do anything with that really. They just use it as a plot device, I guess. This movie sucks. So her friend is the most prominent of the other sorority girls is this ultra woke black girl, just like one of those people who's always starting petitions and trying to get people fired. It does this thing where she already had the guy who ran the college's statue moved, and she's trying to get this professor fired, played by Carrie Elwes, the blonde guy from The Princess Bride and the original Saw movie. And I'll say that Carrie Elwes is one of the few saving graces in this movie because he is definitely chewing the scenery. He knows he's in a bad movie, and while Carrie Elwes isn't very good at serious roles, like in Saw, oh, my family, like, he's not very good at serious roles. He is really good at comedy, and he's playing this more in a comic tone because, like I said, he obviously knows he's in a shit film. So we're just the black girl bothering people to sign a petition to get this guy fired, and because he apparently doesn't have enough. His syllabus, he's a lit teacher, like it's all white males. So,
I will bring you to your knees.
Within 10 minutes of meeting Ultra Woke Girl, she says, stop the rampant misogyny of higher education, and then she says, like, shortly thereafter, she says white male supremacy. Like, this girl is a walking Twitter feed. She is so annoying, and the sad part is the actress is perfectly fine. The acting in this movie is not bad, really. So anyway, they go to this coffee shop where they meet two characters that are pretty emblematic of what's wrong with this movie. They meet the Imogen Poots character's love interest, who is this ultra passive guy. Like, he is so weak, and he's sitting there, like, and he's introduced by saying, because they work at this coffee shop, and he has to sit there and wait for them to finish their conversation before he gets his drink. He says, "Oh, it's fine. I don't mind waiting." They work there. Excuse me. Hey, could you just pour my drink and do your fucking job? You guys can talk on your own time. And then he goes to leave, and like 4 people walk in front of him, and he just sits there. This guy is so lame. And then a blonde frat guy who walks in, and that's code for evil with this movie. So he's just immediately massively rude to them, and they throw a drink in his face. And I was thinking, if that had been me, I probably would have reacted. Like, he does nothing. They throw a drink in his face, he's like, and walks away. It's like, I don't know what I would have done, but I would have done something. So yeah, he does nothing. And then their whole thing is that they're planning this big dance routine, the Mean Girls parody I mentioned earlier, where they're gonna all dress up like naughty Santas, like in Mean Girls, and do this whole dance routine, basically accusing the frat of being the fraternity being full of rapists because the one guy got away with it. And they do this whole song and dance routine, and it's pretty annoying. But they leave after that. And keep in mind, Sophia Call considered that movie, Mean Girls, to be misogynistic, even though it was written by Tina Fey.
I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of running. Go, 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 go! Ho, 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 bitch. You messed with the wrong sisters.
So this movie also does something weird in that it flat out tells us that the fraternity are the villains, like, right up front, you know, because when they're doing their little song and dance routine, they see the frat doing this weird ritual, and they're in the robes of the people that killed the girl at the beginning. So the movie just tells us who the killers are, which is fine because the trailers spoil the fact that Carrie Elways is the killer. So they had a lot of faith in this film. So after that, we get introduced. They do this whole thing where they're going to go out and buy a Christmas tree, and the one girl, the one that was wearing the shirt that says "I'm bored with you monologuing to me," I think, she announces, "I'm going out of town," which is code in a slasher film for they're going to kill me off, but because I'm supposed to be out of town anyway, no one will notice it. So it's just it's a cheap cliche. It's an easy way to get a dead body in a movie without having to explain why no one wonders where this character went. And what's great about her death is that she dies while looking for her cat for no reason, because the cat's inside. And I know that the first movie did a thing with the cat too, like the original Black Christmas, but that one made a little bit more sense. So the way she dies is so stupid. She's looking for the cat, and I mean, I know that there was a cat looking for a cat sequence in the original movie, but it made a little bit more sense because they keep mentioning that the cat was, like, missing. In this movie, she knows the cat's inside. She has a friend that's going to watch the cat for her, so why not just leave? So anyway, she's looking for the cat, she gets killed, and it's great because when they show her dead body outside the sorority later, she's clearly breathing. I mean, it's plain as day. You can just see her breathing. She's like... So, that... Anyway, so they spend the movie trying to figure out what happened to the original girl, like in the original flick. And we already know that the fraternity is the bad guys, and the trailer tells us that Carrie Elways is a bad guy too. Anyway, they do this whole thing where they're getting DMs, which is not nearly as frightening as getting prank phone calls, and it also doesn't really... They're not nearly as intimidating. So then one of the girls in the sorority has this boyfriend who apparently has no male friends because he's always just hanging out with all the sorority girls. And this guy, he has this big outburst where he's like, "Why do you get to say all men are bad, and why can't I say anything bad about women, but you can trash men?" Because he's like, getting all up in arms because they're sitting there doing this whole thing where they're talking about their little dance routine where they call the frat all a bunch of rapists. And it's very out of character for him. And when he says, "Why do you get to trash men, but men can't trash women?" His girlfriend's response is, "Because men have all the power." This movie is so annoying. So then he like storms out, and then they keep talking, and then just out of nowhere, like shit gets real quick. It's just the frat bros just descend on their sorority house with bow and arrows for some reason. I didn't get the significance of why they're using bow and arrows, but they just start shooting arrows at them, and they hit one of them, and then the boyfriend comes back. And this movie has a literal dog whistle, you know, that phrase that people like to use. It's just a dog whistle for it. It's supposed to mean that like it's a coded message for people to kind of pick up on. But this movie has a literal dog whistle that just turns men like evil. So he like like he's hearing it, and the girls can't hear anything. And then he just suddenly is like, "Nah, this is bullshit. Someone attacked my woman. I'm gonna," and then he gets killed immediately. And his final words are, "I believe I'm a man." And then dead. So the girls fight back. Initially, not very successfully. At first, the dead boyfriend, his girlfriend, tries to fight back, and she's like, "Run!" and sacrifices herself in a very stupid, out of nowhere scene. Like, why would you do? So she goes at the guy with an axe and just is immediately killed, just instantly. She does not do much good. But then the Imogen Poots and the woke girl do successfully fight back, and they call campus security. And they had talked to campus security earlier, but he basically blew them off. And he even said the line, "Well, boys will be boys." Like, are you trying to make people cringe? Like this is just also on the nose. It's also blatant. They're checking off boxes. I am astonished that this movie didn't have a scene where someone tells one of the girls to smile. And in fact, given how much footage was cut from this, it ended up being 92 minutes, while the first cut was 111. I'd bet money that one of the scenes cut had a scene where someone tells a girl to smile. Because this does have the scene where the boyfriend and the girlfriend are fighting, where the guy starts an argument and gets all mad and then tells the girl that she's being hysterical. Like, it works that cliche in. Like, this is just checking off the boxes. But it's also really awkward. So they call campus security after they've been attacked. And the campus security arrives, but they go to a different house. But the same thing is happening at this house, and it actually made me do a double take. Like, is this a mistake within the film? Because it's a different house, but it's still a black girl stabbing a hooded figure to death. Which is the exact same thing that was happening. Like, the woke girl was stabbing one of the killers to death. So I'm sitting there like, did they accidentally use her stand-in for this shot? Like, and it was supposed to say that they were attacking multiple sororities, but it's just so awkward the way they did it. I'm just sitting there like, I literally rewound it. It's like, okay, I know that's not the same actress, but is this a mistake? Like, was I not supposed to notice that that's a different act? Like, it was a very awkward cut. So anyway, campus security is immediately killed anyway. And then they leave their house, and Imogen Poots refuses to go to the cops. She's like, because the woke girl is actually being sensible, and she's like, we should just go to the police. And Imogen Poots is like, "Oh, really? Because the police are going to believe me this time? They didn't believe me about the..." Okay, they didn't believe you about the rape because you didn't have enough evidence. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that would be a hard thing to prove. Unlike being assaulted by multiple killers in your house, these guys are wearing hoods, masks, and carrying around weapons in your house. 3 of your friends are dead. I think they only knew 2 of them were dead, but 3 of them are dead. Yeah, the cops are going to believe you. This is not going to take a lot of convincing. They're not going to think you invited these guys over to a costume party and then just started murdering them. So that was stupid as hell. And she gets out of the car, Imogen Poots does, the lead, and she grabs a snow shovel and just walks off down the street and looks dumb. It just looks so dumb. Like, "I'm going to war with my snow shovel." Like, what are you, the old man at the end of Home Alone? Like, this is so dumb. And her boyfriend is just now arriving because he was invited to dinner. And he just kind of immediately goes along with it, like, "Whatever you say," follows her. And he's supposed to create a distraction because she has just pieced all this together in her head somehow that, oh, this black goo that's coming out of them is clearly coming from the statue of the college's founder, who was rumored to do black magic, and he's got some sort of spell on over all these people, and they're trying to kill us in ritual sacrifice. Like, you put all that together. Okay. And again, why are you not just going to the cops? Just tell them to go to the frat. So they bust into the fraternity and have very limited success because they do the dog whistle thing on the boyfriend. He just suddenly becomes a bad guy. And congratulations, the fraternity is diverse now because the boyfriend's black and the fraternity was entirely white. It was a fraternity of evil white people, literally. Again, so on the nose. But they get their first black member, so they won't get sued. And they indoctrinate the boyfriend. They put a little mark on his head. And they do this whole thing where one of the girls that was in the sorority house was apparently a traitor, and she was like feeding them information, and she's all, women have their place. It's just behind men. We're gonna be real women. Like, I'm not sure if she was supposed to be under the spell of the founder's statue, also, or not, or like, or that's just what she believed. But they do. Carrie Elways, who's the lead, like I said, he's the professor, and apparently he was the leader of this whole cult thing. And he doesn't seem to be under the spell. All the other guys, I think, are supposed to be under a spell, but he's not. He's just the leader of the cult. And he does this whole thing where he says, the women that are good and submissive and subservient will be accepted and unharmed. Then they immediately kill the traitor girl. Like, why did you kill her? I mean, I understand that the point the director and the writer are trying to make, that it, like that argument that women will support bad men because they think they're less likely to be attacked by them, and they're just trying to say, no, that's not true. But in story, there's no reason that they killed her. And they even do this really dumb thing where they say she was supposed to collect objects to target the girls that weren't behaving themselves, that weren't being appropriately subservient. So she stole all this crap from her sisters, like she stole the first girl's vibrator, and she stole the other girl's tampon. But there's no reason for this. Like, they all live in the same house. You know their names. You've seen their faces. Why do you need... What the hell? This is a plot device that makes zero sense. This is a terrible script. And they do this whole thing where she confronts the guy that raped her, and he keeps saying, you will bow to men, you will bow to us. Like, so fucking blatant. So just jackhammer to the temple obvious. So they do this whole thing where they like she like, I refuse to bow, and at that moment the other sorority girls, the ones that survived the attack on their house, and the woke girl just go like straight up 300. Like they ready for war. They bust in and just attack and kick these guys' asses, frankly. And it's even scored like 300. Like the music sounds like 300, and it's unintentionally funny. And she breaks the vase, and the spell kind of goes off of these guys, and all the frat guys collapse. The spell is just broken on the boyfriend. There wasn't really any reason why he was different than the others. But and then they light Carrie Elways on fire. And if you've seen the unrated version, the version they released on disc, then you know that the woke girl says "suck my clit," which is funny because in the PG-13 version she just says "suck my." They didn't even bother coming up with something else. She just says "suck my," and she lights his ass on fire and he burns. And they leave, and they leave all the other frat guys to die in the fire. They even lock the door to make sure they can't get out if they wake up, because they all collapsed when the vase got broken. It's like, so you just murdered all those guys. Like, they were under a spell. They weren't in the wrong. They presumably, once the spell was broken, they would have just woken up and been perfectly normal. And she's smiling at it. She's like, yeah, I killed all those motherfuckers. Not. So this movie is so unbearable and so on the nose and so preachy. And the sad thing is that it's not a bad looking movie. It's actually reasonably well made, especially if you saw the uncut version. The PG-13 version is kind of edited poorly. It's choppy, but like I said, they cut over 10 minutes from the movie, so it was bound to look a little choppy. But it's a reasonably well shot, well made movie. The cast is perfectly fine. And if you cut even half of the just Twitter speak, blatant, preachy crap, because the thing is that it's so overt, and it makes this a really irritating movie to watch. Like, it's funny, you can sit there and laugh at it, like, especially in an I can't believe they did that. Like, they even do a post-credits scene where the cat is sitting there drinking the black goo that leaks out of them when you poke them, because they have black goo instead of blood. Why was that in there? Why would you do that? Is the cat going to go homicidal now? Is that supposed to be the implication? There's no rhyme or reason. they said they're just checking off boxes. Like they even do this one thing where when they're gonna kill Imogen Poots at the end of the movie, Carrie always announces "See no evil, boys," and the king of the cult comes in, and they never explain who this guy is. The king of the cult. Presumably, he's just the physical embodiment of the founder of the school that practiced black magic. But you never see his face. He never says anything. Anyway, he says, "See no evil, boys," and they all turn around because they're supposed to do like the whole. They're trying to make a point about the whole rape culture where you cast a blind eye, you look away. It's just all so doing all of this in one movie. This is like 5 movies worth of metaphors and commentary crammed into one really crappy 90-minute slasher movie. So yeah, look at that. I say this is the second worst horror movie of all time. It's worse than The Fog, because The Fog, while bad, was forgettably bad. I mean, I wouldn't say forgettable. It was pretty monumentally terrible, but it wasn't really, like, irritating. It wasn't the type of movie where if you like the original, you're going to be really angry. People who like the original Black Christmas, like, when they saw the 2006 Black Christmas, the original remake, there's a phrase now, I guess, that we have so many damn remakes we have. The original Black Christmas remake, they would walk out and just be like, it's just a weak movie, kind of dumb, pointless. They walk out of this movie like, how is this a remake of Black Christmas? This guy, magic and evil fraternities and crap? This should not have been a Black Christmas remake. And some people think it wasn't. Some people think that it probably was a pre-existing script that got kind of retrofitted into Black Christmas. There are so few references to the original movie. I find that very believable. I think that it's very possible this was something that was already around and they just kind of dumped out with the Black Christmas name for marketability. But yeah, this movie sucks. It's terrible. And Black Christmas '06 is bad. Like, it's amazing that you have to say, well, the original remake wasn't very good, but this remake is ungodly bad. This is uniquely bad. I almost want to go back and watch Pulse again, the American remake of Pulse, and think, is Black Christmas 2019 the worst remake? I don't think it is, though. That Pulse remake, from what I remember, was almost unintelligible. Like, it was so poorly made and so poorly cut together that it was just... I think that it's still the worst horror remake. This is probably the second worst horror remake. It surpassed The Fog, which for a long time was, in my opinion, the second worst horror remake. So yeah, god-awful films. They shouldn't. Why did Hollywood do this to us? They never should have touched the original Black Christmas, and if they were, apparently Bob Clark even considered making a sequel, but he died. He died very suddenly of a car accident, so he never got the chance. But yeah, I don't really think that they need to do anything with Black Christmas. It was a pretty decent standalone film, but they remade it poorly twice. But let's look forward to the next Black Christmas, which, I don't know, maybe be like high school production level film, like one of those movies that's shot on a cell phone and has non-professional actors. I mean, they got to make it worse. Each one's got to get worse, right? That's the trajectory we're on. We got to go from here to here to here. I'm done.